everybody, I'm Brian Julius. I'm the Chief Content Officer for Enterprise DNA. And I'm excited because I'm here with one of my favorite people in the Power BI community, Sue Bays.
Hi.
Hi, Sue. Thanks for joining us today. And Sue is a Power BI consultant. She's a Microsoft certified trainer, and she's a blogger, one of the best blogs, one of my favorite blogs in the Power BI sphere. And is also really one of the most active people in the Power BI community. That I feel like everybody knows Sue, and Sue knows everybody. So we're thrilled to have her today. She is the instructor and developer of a new course series for us on Paginated Reports. And so we want to spend some time talking with her today about the course and how to make the most of it, kind of where we're headed with it. So welcome, Sue. Great to have you with us today.
Oh, hi, Brian. Thank you. And that's a lovely introduction. So no, it's lovely. Thank you. And I'm really, really thrilled. I get so much value from the content from Enterprise DNA. So I'm delighted to be part of the organization and to give a little bit back, because I've certainly got so much. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long-standing partnership and one that we really value.
Definitely.
So before we dive into Paginated Reports, I just wanted to kind of have you tell a little bit about your story and kind of how you got in with Power BI and kind of into the training aspect and the teaching aspect and kind of how you got where you are now.
No worries. So I'm 52, so I may not, I was 52, I'm 8, so I'm a bit old, but I started off my career working with Access databases, and I'm business and I'm finance, and I discovered Access databases, and I started designing and building them, and I worked for Xerox, and I sort of fell in love with the way that IT enables business to communicate with each other and to pull out insights. And I don't like doing boring things. So if I have to do something really boring, I think there must be a better way. There must be a quicker way. And so I'm a bit fascinated really with IT. And I worked as a project director, and then I ended up running projects and talking and selling and presenting, and personal circumstances changed and I went into teaching. So I went back to university and I studied as a lecturer for adults, or 14, 16, 18, and started teaching business, and then migrated to IT and IT within business, and love Excel, and then progressed into programming. So started to learn Python and information systems and databases and SQL. And I got to a stage where I got a bit fed up with teaching it, only for everyone to have to go and play with it. And I couldn't play with it myself because you're too busy teaching.
Right.
So I started to, I said, can I do 4 days a week teaching and 1 day a week running my own business? Because I'd like to start developing and working with this full time. And over the course of time, I was able to stop teaching completely and work now full time with Power BI. But I remember finding out about Excel Power Pivot, and I just could not believe that in the background of Excel, there was this relational database. I was just, and I was working for a business part-time on retention. So I was looking at all of their sales and retention, and I started looking at data itself. So there was something I wanted to be able to do. So I started progressing with Python, then using Python for data analysis. And then I wanted to be able to do look at retention and frequency of sales, and lots of marketing businesses are interested in new customers, but there seemed to be this, we have our existing customers, and it makes so much more sense to keep who you have rather than continually get new. But it's easy to measure new as opposed to existing. So there was a library in R, and I thought, oh, so I learned R to be able to use that. But then I found that a lot of businesses, they're not really interested in how you do things. They just want the results.
Right.
And they don't necessarily want to learn R or Python, and Excel is sat on their machine. And then I discovered Power BI. So I did the EDX. So I started learning EDX with Excel, and then I started into Power BI, and I fell in love with Power BI. So it just the way that you can pull data in from all sorts of sources, and you can transform it. And I just completely fell in love with Power BI and the visualizations. And I built an app in R. R has this app called Shiny. And so I had hard coded R Shiny, and it took forever. And then I used Power BI, and you just drag and drop.
Yeah. And the combination of those two is just dynamite, either, Power BI and Python or Power BI and R. I just feel like there's nothing you can't do.
No, I haven't I haven't used a lot of R and Python with Power BI because of the different gateways. And I just have got, there's so much to learn, isn't there, with Power BI? You're continually learning. But I do tend to dip into R for sentiment analysis. So I quite like it for that.
I mean, what's great about it is there's, 20,000 packages. So as you say, like, you run into, something like, like sentiment analysis or churn analysis, and somebody's written a package for that you can do it in 3 lines.
And they're so helpful. I was trying to do retention and frequency analysis, and there's, like you say, there was a library, and I couldn't understand why it wasn't working. So I just emailed the chap, and he was brilliant and just taught me through it. And but our community is like that. There's so many people that just help us all the time, and so that's a really joyful place to be, because if you're in business, quite often there's a financial, if you're sharing information, they're not quite as open, whereas in IT we tend to be so much more open about sharing and helping each other.
And I love the fact that both sharing information, sharing knowledge. I mean, with the summits that we do, I think I've asked like a total of well over 50 people in the 2 summits, and I've only gotten 3 no's, and one of them was because I'm having a baby at that time. One of which is I'm gonna be in the mountains with no internet access, and the third one was just a schedule conflict. And so but it's like over 95% say sure, I'd be happy to do it. And it's just it really is a great community. So I wanted to kind of switch gears and talk about paginated reports, and talk about some of the use cases where you think paginated reports would really be a valuable addition to the Power BI skill set.
So I think there's 3 basic areas that I found that people want to use paginated reports. One is if you want to be able to print more than is on the current page. So you want a scrollable list, then paginated reports allow you to print a report over many, many pages, and you can make it completely pixel perfect. So it's exactly how you want it to be. So it gives a great printable version. I've only tended to use it as PDFs, although you can print or export in many different file, or where you can print sort of static files, or you can print to web browsers. Or another reason one of my customers specifically require the ability to print the data from Power BI onto a PDF version is because it's time-stamped. So there's a legal requirement to give you an extract of data, which is time-stamped for that specific time. Another one is if perhaps you want to share the information to people that don't have Power BI, because not every business has Power BI or wants to use Power BI, which seems strange to us using it.
Like, why wouldn't you? But yeah,
why wouldn't you? But they don't, and they might want to send out. One of my customers uses lists, and they send it out to non-technical people as an email attachment, that they just get really nice one-page report or two-page report showing the data, and that's all they need to know. So it's a way that you can share your information. It looks highly professional without needing to have the licensing from Power BI. So that tends to be the way that I found that businesses have used it.
And what would you say is kind of the baseline level of knowledge you need in Power BI to be effective in utilizing paginated reports?
You don't need a huge amount of Power BI knowledge. You need to understand a little bit about tables and measures, but you don't, if you have access to a Power BI data set, you don't necessarily need to understand how Power BI works. You need to understand how to export fields and maybe build tables, but you don't necessarily need to have a huge amount of Power BI knowledge.
So you would say not even kind of high beginner would be perfectly
if you can
acceptable.
build a table visual in a Power BI report, you can then create a paginated report, because you can use Power BI. And in one of the sessions on the actual course, I show how you can use Performance Analyzer in Power BI to use the query from a table. So you create a table in Power BI. You can use Power BI to show you how that table has been built with DAX. And then you can copy that and put it into paginated reports. And that paginated reports will then build the table for you. So as long as you have a basic level of knowledge of Power BI, you can use paginated reports.
That's great. Yeah.
So there's 3 or 4 different ways that you can pull the data out from a Power BI data set into a paginated report. So I think it's fairly straightforward. It's where the challenge is it's such a powerful package, is understanding how to get it to do what you want it to do. So the baseline knowledge of Power BI is quite low, I would say, beginner level.
That's what I was going to ask you, is kind of what are some of the, in teaching this to people, kind of what are some of the things you've found are challenges or stumbling blocks, or kind of ways in which people need to think a little bit differently about their report design?
To have a pen and paper ready, because it's pixel perfect. So you need to understand what your page size is, what your margins are, to make sure that it all fits onto one page, because it's like Excel. It will do exactly what you tell it to do, but it doesn't necessarily tell you whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing to do. So think about it like anything, isn't it? Think about a little bit about what you want to achieve, and start simple. Start really simple. Paginated reports isn't a data, I would say, monging machine. It doesn't make sure the data you push into it has been cleaned before you put it in. So don't expect to be able to put it into paginated reports and do all sorts of the transformations that you do in Power BI. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to produce pixel perfect reports. So if you can clean your data before you put it in, think about what you want it to achieve, and think about what you're asking it to do and how it's going to be reproduced, and the method, because it will, you can produce it into Word or PDF or Excel, or you can have it as a web page, and how you export it changes how it looks within the actual report itself. But it's actually really quite fun once you get your head around how it works, and it just works. It's just a lovely piece of code, but it's just thinking beforehand, what do I want it to do?
And do you do some pretty extensive wireframing before you get in and start building your reports?
It depends. Typical consultant, it depends. If I'm doing something that's, if I'm doing something that's
it's always the right answer.
Yeah, quite complex, where I've got lots of different reports showing different things on one exported PDF. There's one particular report I do, and we've got about 12 pages of different things that expand. Then you need to think about, because there's an order by which it runs through the different visuals. So if you're doing that, then yes, definitely think about the wireframing and how it fits in. If you're doing a simple table, then you can play with it, and you can, especially when you're starting to begin, you can sort of do it fairly straightforward. But you can get started quite quickly.
I really like the approach you take in this introductory course that we were talking about before, about kind of taking what will be a very familiar report to Enterprise DNA members. It's one of Sam's very recognizable reports, and using that as the basis for developing that paginated report.
Yeah, because it's accessible. Anyone can. What I wanted to be able to do is I needed to learn it for a couple of different businesses that I worked for that needed it to happen. And I found it really frustrating sometimes, because I knew what I wanted to do, but I couldn't work out which box needed ticking, or, how to make things happen, because sometimes it's not intuitive. So what I wanted with this course was to give people the option to play along with me. So the management insights I've used for the introductory course is something that everyone will have access to. You don't need to have premium per user. You only need to have premium per user if you share it, if you want to republish it, but you don't actually have to. You can print it off as a PDF from within Report Builder. So as long as people have Power BI and they're an enterprise member, then they can use Sam's Management Insights report, publish that to a workspace, and then they'll be able to do exactly what I've done and produce the reports without having to have PPU or premium licensing.
Yeah,
the only bit they won't be able to do is publish it back to the service, but they'll be able to print it as a PDF from within Report Builder. So it should be entirely accessible to everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. And, I really feel that, I've always felt that, kind of learn by doing is the way, it's certainly the way I learn. And so, kind of having it set up so that you can work along in a report that, as I say, should be pretty familiar to folks. And if not, it's a pretty straightforward Power BI report. I mean, it's one, there are no custom visuals, no esoteric techniques. It's pretty garden variety Power BI.
Yeah.
I think it makes a great example.
It is, and I use there's 3 or 4 dimension tables, 1 fact table,
right?
That's all we use. The measures are all built, so you can very easily build queries and start to add in a table. And for the next course that we're working on currently, I'm starting to build in the spark lines and the data bars, and Paul Turley, who is a complete genius with Paginated Reports and Report Builder, has just created a blog post on Gantt chart. So he's he's given me permission to use his knowledge to show you how to build a Gantt chart in Paginated Reports. So that's coming for the next course.
Yeah, and I think that is such a practical use case, because in the project management that I've done, Gantt charts are one of those things. There aren't a lot of things that I'll print off in hard copy, because most things I think just work better in electronic. But Gantt charts are something that I will always have right on my cabinet, for every project that I'm working on, printed out so that I can, just at a glance, I can look up and see, okay, where should we be? Where are we? We ahead of schedule, behind schedule. And I've seen the report you developed based on Paul's blog post, and I think it's exactly, as a project manager, what I would want to be able to generate in Power BI. And I think your example is a really good one, because it's a pretty long list of project tasks. So if you did it in a traditional Power BI report, it would just stop at line 10. And you'd otherwise you'd have to screenshot it and piece your screenshots together in PowerPoint, which I've done before. But this is just such a better way of doing it, and you can distribute it that way. And I think that's going to be wonderfully practical for a lot of users. And I wanted to, you led perfectly into my next question, which is kind of the progression. We envisioned this as kind of a 3-course series. And if you could talk a little bit about, we've got the intro course here and what that covers, and then kind of the second course, and then what your vision for that third course is. And
so the second course, I want to do more of the formatting, because there's so many things that you can do with paginated reports. So Gantt charts, spark lines, data bars, many different visuals within a particular report. So thinking about the wireframing and some of the cascading parameters, so some more complex reports. And then for the third one, I'm sketching it out at the moment, but what I'd quite like to do, and depending on time, I want to show how to embed a paginated report within Power BI desktop. And then also for the third one, what I would like to do is think about how to use Power Automate to generate a paginated report that you can then send to specific people. So, use cases using all 3 tools: paginated reports, Power Automate, Power BI. So starting to think about that for the final one. But what would be really cool would be because I haven't planned the third one yet, I've pretty much finished the second one, would be for people to say, this is what I would find useful to do the third one. So a bit of user input might be quite helpful. If people think, actually, that would be really good, I'd like to know how to do that, then it's always good to sort of find out what your users want as well.
And we've done that with a number of the Power Apps and Power Automate courses and webinars. And so I would welcome anybody in the membership or watching this video to to provide input to Sue and I about kind of what you would find useful use cases that we could address either in this course series or in other content. And so you can message either of us directly on LinkedIn, through the Enterprise DNA forum, any way you want to contact us. So we'd love to get that sort of feedback.
Yeah, definitely, because it's all about your user requirements, isn't it? So the second one is more examples of how to do specific things. So I've got 4 or 5 blocks of this is this report, this is another report, the Gantt chart, and then for the final one, I want a little bit more, how you can use DAX queries to generate and reproduce reports. And
kind of bigger scale, as you say, kind of integrated projects with it.
Integrated.
Kind of always looking at, kind of as Microsoft just integrates the different components more and more tightly. And I think, the stuff coming out of Build this week,
Yeah.
is all about that. And
Yeah.
the way it's getting incorporated into PowerPoint and Teams and Outlook.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I think we're just going to see more and more of the components kind of working together, as opposed to being, we've got Power BI over here and, Power Apps over here.
Yeah.
They're really, really coming together in a nice way.
Yeah. I think, using Automate and BI and Paginated Reports, it's that, so you can look and see what's on your report. You can say, well, so what does this mean? What action am I going to take? And to be able to use the button within, send this off to these people. If it's, if it drops below, send them this in an email and attach that. And so that's where the way my brain's working at the moment, Brian. And I've got a couple of customers that are sort of talking about that as well. So it all ties in quite nicely.
It was interesting. I had an interesting discussion with somebody on LinkedIn a couple of days ago where they were talking about reporting, and they were saying at the executive level, the best thing you can do is not report at all. That if everything is fine, don't be, basically as the executive, don't be sending me a report that says everything's fine, nothing's changed. If I know though that it's automated to the point where if it moves outside of the acceptable bounds, I'm going to get a report immediately.
Yeah.
It tells me that. It's like, and we're saying that's really, that's really the goal to be moving to is, kind of reporting when needed.
Yeah, definitely. And then giving actions as well, being able to take actions from it. But, sometimes there can be so much information, isn't it, that it's only having the necessary information you need.
Exactly. So just to briefly wrap up, I wanted to change direction a little bit, and just while I've got you here, kind of tap your expertise and experience, because a lot of folks I've been talking to recently are kind of looking at taking and leveraging what they've learned in Power BI and in the Enterprise DNA platform and in challenges, and moving into the consulting world. And you've really kind of beautifully synthesized your domain experience from Xerox with your teaching experience and then in your consulting experience. And I'm wondering if you could just kind of think about it, kind of a tip or two that you would give kind of based on what you've learned in that experience to somebody thinking about making that leap into the consulting world to kind of make the most of their Power BI skills.
I think it's being open and chatting wherever you go. And I remember I got one customer from, he comes in about 5 o'clock to say, walk and feed me, mum. But I was having my car serviced and I was chatting to a guy there who was having his car serviced as well, just making pleasant conversation. And he'd come back from skiing for 3 or 4 months. I said, oh, that's my dream to be able to, I was just talking about it, to be a consultant, work wherever. And he then pointed me towards someone else and I chatted to them. And from that, I got some work just by chatting about what I do and what I wanted to do. And it's about being open and putting yourself out there and having a portfolio. So you can show people what you do, learning all the time, not just Power BI, but learning about business and how to communicate and how to listen to what people want. Because I can't remember where I read it somewhere recently, is actually people aren't necessarily interested in how you're going to do things. They want to know what you're going to give them, whereas as IT specialists, sometimes we can say, I can remember being so excited about showing someone an app in R or something. And he said, I don't really care. I don't care, Sue. I don't care how you're going to do it or what you're going to do. I just want it done. Like, oh, okay. So, which they're not really, are they? They just want the answers. But the way that I did it is that I kept my full-time job and I started slowly, and I did 1 day's consultancy, and then I dropped to 2 days consultancy and 3 days full-time job. And I work all the time. I work all the time, but it's not work to me because I love what I'm doing. So
same here.
you have to, it doesn't come easily. You have to work and work and work and work. But if what you're doing you love, it's not work. And it takes time, because I remember for the first 6 months or so, I seemed to spend more time promoting and building websites or going to networking places and than I did actually doing my business. Because you think, well, I just want to build reports and in Power BI, but you have to go out and you have to meet people. And I went to LinkedIn, LinkedIn networking things. This is pre-COVID, and I got lots of bits of work, but you do bits and then you build up a portfolio and you build up recommendations on LinkedIn. So, if you do work and people like it, ask them to recommend you on LinkedIn. The money doesn't come straight away. You sort of think, I want this, and you have this picture of what you're going to get. That doesn't come immediately. So be prepared to invest in yourself, in courses. Be prepared to work hard. Be prepared to talk to anyone and everyone about whatever they're doing. Be prepared to do some stuff for free, because until you start getting more experienced, sometimes it takes you longer. So at the beginning it would take me a lot longer to do things, and so if I was learning how to do something, I wouldn't charge the customer for my learning. I would charge them for what I'd done, but my individual learning. And I spend a lot of money on training, because you have to stay fresh. And it might be, you might think, well, I don't need to know how to do that yet, but you need to know that it's available if you need to do it.
Right. It's funny. I talk a lot about familiarity as opposed to mastery.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sayings I learned from somebody's, life is an open book test.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to have it all up here, but you need to know that exists.
Yes.
And so
absolutely.
when you see that problem, you can say, oh, I've seen a solution to that before, or I know who's the expert in that area, and I know to go, to this person's blog or this person's videos, or and I think that your point about always being in the community and constantly learning, it just, the field changes so fast,
it's crazy.
every day. And that's where I really wanted to say thanks, in terms of to you and to the other content creators that we work with, because I think it's through your content and your efforts that we're able to keep our membership really on the cutting edge. We're always looking, looking to say, what's the gap in what we're offering, and go out and find the best people, whether they're our experts or external folks, partners, to say who's the right person to teach this course. And I really feel, you were just the perfect fit for this course. And I think people are really going to enjoy it. I enjoyed very much going through it. It wasn't an area of Power BI that I knew much at all about. And so, there are times when I take off my content officer hat and I just put on my student hat. And I just really enjoyed going through it.
Oh, brilliant. I just hope that if I can save some people the time and the frustration that I had, because you just have to learn, and you're like, well, why is it doing that? I don't understand. And then, it's because of this. And then, if we can save people some of that time, then, it's all worth it, isn't it? But yeah, no, I'm very happy to be part of Enterprise DNA. And, I know when I first joined, you're made to feel so welcome by the whole team. and that's the same in the forums. You can ask the silly questions that you think are silly, and no one tells you they're silly. They're just pleased to help. So
they're all questions we've all had at some point, so
yeah.
yeah.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so
you've
much,
had my
Sue.
dog jump in.
I think that's one of my favorite things about the work at home, stretch that we've been in, is you see people's pets, you see their kids, you see all kinds of stuff, and I enjoy that. So, well, it's always a pleasure, Sue. I really enjoy talking with you, and I think, as I say, I think people are really gonna enjoy this course series, get a lot out of it. And
I hope so. I do. And the next one is the next one's already in progress, so I'm excited to be able to share it with people.
And that'll be coming out. We're going to be putting Sue's course out in the next couple of days in June, and the second one, I think, by the end of July.
Oh, perfect! So, brilliant.
Yeah.
Woo! Gantt charts, Gantt charts, and spark lines, and data bars.
Very much looking forward to that, and definitely thanks to Paul for allowing us to use his example. It's a good one.
He's got so much knowledge. So I did ask him, and he said yes, no problem. So that was good. Yeah. Oh, well, it's a pleasure talking to you, Brian. I better go and walk my dog.
Thanks again, Sue. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.